Welcome back to the Here's the Deal channel. We got to talk about Lackluster's last video. I'm not going to show any clips from it. I really want you to go over there and see it for yourself. But we can't minimize this idea of the abuse of power and retaliatory stops. When you've got a guy, and you've got a society who actually believes that the cops have a legitimate right to come into your life and tell you whatever they want to tell you and do to you whatever they want to do to you without any kind of substantial repercussions. I'm talking about substantial. I'm talking about the same repercussions that would happen to you if you messed with a fellow community member or somebody in your area and you were getting in the way of their life, liberty, and property. My question is, when are we going to hold up life, liberty, and property as something that if you mess with it, you are going to be severely punished? Because I guarantee you, if we set something like that in place, there would be very few people, including costumed clowns, who would step over that line if the penalties were stiff enough. And I'm talking about penalties coming from society. The problem is, we have society who doesn't mind being run over by the Thin Blue Line gang. So what we're talking about here is the Montrose, Colorado Police Department, specifically Officer Baca and Sergeant English. Now, Dale from Lackluster brought up some really good Supreme Court cases that I want to go over right here. One of them was Spence v. Washington. And this centers around the Montrose Police Department, who had a car pulled over. Apparently it was a stolen vehicle. They had already gotten the driver and the passenger out. They already had them arrested. But in the process, they were blocking an A&W drive-through. So there was this one guy, he couldn't get through, so he yelled an obscenity at the officers. The officers got their feelings hurt. Sergeant English walks up to where the guy is, where he's placing his order at the A&W drive-through window, and eventually it ends up with a retaliatory stop where he gives him a citation for basically disturbing the peace or whatever it was. But Spence v. Washington is really interesting, and you got to let it sink in, guys, because if you don't have the right to speak, then you don't have any rights. If you don't have the freedom to cuss out a police officer who's doing a horrible job, then you don't have any rights at all in the United States. Spence v. Washington says, if absolute assurance of tranquility is required, we may as well forget about free speech. So if you raise your voice in objection to what a cop is doing as they're blocking a drive-through window while you're trying to get lunch, if raising your voice is squashing that is required, if absolute assurance of tranquility and peace and quiet is required, you might as well forget about free speech. Let's just rip the First Amendment right out of the Bill of Rights. Under such a requirement, the only free speech would consist of platitudes. That kind of speech does not need constitutional protection. If you're getting your feelings hurt, you're in the wrong line of work, Sergeant English from the Montrose, Colorado Police Department. I'll leave those links in the description below so you can leave your thoughts about how you think the Montrose Police did. And we're going to go over two more Supreme Court cases that Dale brought up in the course of his video. But you got to understand, if somebody is in the position of power, he's in the position of a public trust. People are trusting that individual or those individuals, those clowns in clown suits, to do the right thing. And they take that power and they abuse it and squash the life, liberty, and property of another American. A stiff penalty should be laid to their account. And I mean to their account. I'll let you know at the end of this video what I think should be done to at least Officer Baca and Sergeant English, because they both knew what Sergeant English was going to do. City of Houston versus Hill. It says the First Amendment protects a significant amount of verbal criticism and challenge directed at officers. A significant amount. You can exercise your free speech without fear of punishment, without fear of penalty, without fear that you're going to be tased or maybe murdered on the roadside by a thin blue line tyrant. The First Amendment protects a significant, we would do well to maybe memorize some of these Supreme Court cases, Spence v. Washington and City of Houston versus Hill. Just memorize this. The First Amendment protects a significant amount of verbal criticism and challenge directed at police officers. Do you not think Sergeant English and Officer Baca understand and know this? They're supposed to be law enforcement officers. They have no excuse. It's their profession. It's their job to know the law. Do you think they don't know City of Houston versus Hill? I bet they do. Memorize this right here. It's as important as memorizing the 5 tenets of the First Amendment. RAPPS, religion, assembly, petition, press, speech. No cop can interfere with those 5 tenets in the First Amendment. How about your Second Amendment right? I know this is a little bit off into the weeds, but you have the right to keep and bear arms. I don't care if you're in New York. I don't care if you're in Chicago. I don't care if you're in a federal building. I don't care if you're in California. I don't care if you're in Maine or any of these crazy places that have strict gun laws. No cop should view himself as obligated to obey any law that is above the Second Amendment. And yet they do it all the time. As a matter of fact, they'll even lie, like the civil rights lawyer did a thing yesterday where the initial report from the police officer that went in the newspaper was they had a large amount of guns and ammunition. No American should look at that as, oh, wow, they must be involved in criminal activity. We all need to cleanse our minds with life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You have the right to have an arsenal in your house if you want to. You can have the largest cache of ammunition that anybody has ever heard of, and nobody should view you as criminal. That's how they took down Waco. Oh, they have stockpiles of weapons. They're bad people, is the idea. Give me a frickin' break. See, the problem is not so much that we have tyrants who want to rule us, but we have a whole bunch of lemmings out there sticking their heads in the sand who want to be ruled. That's our problem. And this other one, which is Terminiello versus Chicago, it says speech is often provocative and challenging, but it is nevertheless protected against censorship or punishment, Sergeant English, unless shown likely to produce a clear and present danger of a serious substantive evil that arises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or unrest. Let that sink in. Speech is often provocative and challenging. Somebody may say something that hurts your feelings or deeply offends you. Guess what? They got the right, the unalienable right to say it, a right that nobody gave them and a right that nobody can take away, Sergeant English, not even with threats of punishment and fine. You moron. But it is nevertheless, it's provocative and challenging, but it's nevertheless protected against censorship or punishment. And who should be protecting that? That's why we establish government, right? To protect our rights. That's what you're there for, right, Sergeant English? Right, Detective or Officer Baca? You're there to protect our rights. You're not there to abuse your power and take our rights. What the hell's wrong with you? Yeah, so it's provocative, it's challenging, it hurts our feelings, it could be offensive, but it's nevertheless protected against censorship and punishment, unless shown likely to produce a clear and present danger. Going around through the drive-thru again to tell the officers they need to get the frick out of the way because people are hungry and they want to go to that A&W drive-thru and eat, and you guys are obstructing a business. That's another thing. I bet A&W doesn't appreciate the fact that for 30 minutes, it sounds like, they were kept from their customers, and the customers were kept from people who wanted that good or service. It's nonsense, man. It's almost like every chance they get, they want to step in the way of peaceful coexistence and mutual, voluntary transactions. It's protected against censorship and punishment unless shown likely to produce a clear and present danger of a serious substantive evil that arises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or unrest. far above Baca, far above English. So what do I think should happen to at least Sergeant English, if not Baca and the rest of them who knew what Sergeant, their commanding officer, was going to do to this poor guy by him abusing his power and giving a citation of, I think it was like $120. Now the guy's got to spend money. He's got to go to court. It's going to cost him time. Guys, all you have in this life is your time and your labor. And these cops who are supposed to be protecting your life, protecting your liberty, protecting your pursuit of happiness, are constantly costing you your time and labor, the most precious things that you have. So what do I think should happen to Sergeant English? And you tell me if you agree or disagree. I think at the minimum, he should lose his job and his credentials to ever be a police officer ever again. He should be jailed a minimum of 12 months, and his assets should be liquidated to repay that man for inconveniencing him. And I think the same should happen to Officer Baca. She should go to jail for at least a minimum of 12 months. How fast do you think police abuse of power would correct itself? How quickly do you think that true accountability for the thin blue line will be enacted in this land? I bet it would happen real quick. So the name of the police department is the Montrose, Colorado Police Department. The two officers involved are Officer Baca and specifically Sergeant English. And I will leave those links in the description. Don't forget to go visit Lackluster. Check out his video. He just released it. Today's Thanksgiving, by the way. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you have plenty of food, great times, and that you're going to be able to spend it with people you love and people who love you. So happy Thanksgiving. But go over to Lackluster's channel. Watch that video. I'll put the link in the description and in the pinned comment. You know what? I'm going to stop the pinned comment thing. They always get deleted by YouTube. So check out the description for Lackluster's video and the link to the Montrose Police Department with Sergeant English and Officer Baca. Appreciate you guys. Again, have a happy Thanksgiving. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification icon. Give it a thumbs up. Share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list or my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member. But more importantly, understand what your rights are and exercise your rights. If you don't exercise your rights, you're going to lose those rights. And yeah, exercising those rights, it could be dangerous. It could be scary. It could be unpredictable. But what's more dangerous, scary, and unpredictable is not having those rights. And we don't want to get to that point. I'll see you in the next video.